بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So previously you guys had an exam up to hadith number 30. So we have now remaining how many hadith? In total 20 hadith remaining, inshallah. So بإذن ta'ala, it shouldn't take long, these 20 hadith. بإذن ta'ala, in about 8 lessons تقريبا should be able to finish all those ahadith. Obviously, we have some dawrat and some other events coming up, so some lessons might be cancelled here and there. But whenever a program is not taking place, we'll have a lesson. So even if it's during the holidays, but there's no program going on in the masjid at the time, and I'm available, we still have the lesson, inshallah. After the Dawrah for approximately a week, we won't have a lesson. I'll be traveling with the Mashayikh. But after that, inshallah, we'll have a lesson. So hopefully within the summer holidays, we'll finish the book with Allah Ta'ala. So today, inshallah, the plan is to take three hadith. So the first one, hadith 31, who's memorized it? Just one student, mashallah. Banakram.
عن أبي العباس سهل بن سعد الساعدي رضي الله عنه قال: جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال: يا رسول الله دلني على عمل إذا عملته أحبني الله وأحبني الناس. فقال: اسر في الدنيا يحبك الله وزد فيما عند الناس يحبك الناس. حديث حسن رواه ابن ماجه وغيره بأسانيد حسن.
وغيره
و-
وغيره وغيره
بأسانيد حسنة.
change the meaning. وغيره means he changed the hadith. What does وغيره mean?
تفضل.
Yes, narrator Ibn Majah and others. No, أحسنت. ها.
حديث 31 عن
الحديث again.
عن ابي العباس سعد بن
سعد ابني سهل بن سعد الساعدي.
الساعدي
Yeah.
رضي الله عنه.
وفي جون سعد دين الساعدي.
رضي الله عنه قال: أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم جاء الرجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال: يا رسول الله يا رسول الله دلني إلى عمل إذا عملته أحبني الله وأحبني الناس. فقال: ازهد في الدنيا يحبك الله وازهد فيما عند الناس يحبك الناس. حديث حسن رواه ابن ماجه والدارقطني وغيره.
رواه ابن ماجه
رواه ابن ماجه وغيره.
وغيره. That's the next hadith. بأسانيد حسنة. No. Okay, so firstly the takhrij of the hadith. So this hadith has been narrated by, as you can see, Ibn Majah and others. So it's narrated in Sunan Ibn Majah, hadith number 4102. 4102. Ibn Majah 4102. It's also been narrated in other books. So it's been narrated in Al-Mustadrak. Who's that by? Her name. Who's Mustadrak by? Ibn Hakim. لا. You say Ibn Hakim. Al-Hakim. Not the son of Hakim. Al-Hakim himself. So Mustadrak of Hakim, hadith number 7873. 7873. 7873. It's also been narrated in the book Shu'ab al-Iman. Who wrote Shu'ab al-Iman? Musa? No. Amar? Al-Bayhaqi. Shu'ab al-Iman, very famous book. Al-Bayhaqi, hadith number 10,043. So 10,043. 10,043. 10, no, sorry, 10043 or 10043. Yeah. And lastly, in Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir, that's written by, and we took these books in our intro. Uthman, Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir, who's that written by? There are three books: Mu'jam Al-Kabir, Mu'jam Al-Awsat, Mu'jam Al-Saghir. عمار.
سيوطي.
لا دي نظام حديث وقت هذا. تمام. أحمد. نوح. موسى. الطبراني. By الطبراني. So المعجم الكبير حديث number 5970. 5970. Look, obviously I don't expect you guys to memorize the hadith numbers, but at least the benefit is you get used to the different books and the different names because they're repeated. These are famous books you should all know. Okay, as for hadith benefits, the hadith itself is big. The hadith itself is big. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah mentioned it is weak. So, however, as you can see, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah said here, hadithun hasan. Likewise, Albani said it's hasan. However, he mentioned that it is hasan li ghayrihi, hasan due to others. Right? So remember we talked about hasan li dhati, hasan li ghayrihi. It's hasan li ghayrihi. So it is da'if in of itself, weak in of itself, but due to the supporting narrations, it's strengthened to the level of being hasan. Okay, the status of the hadith has a very high status and is one of the hadith that the religion is based upon. Some ulama have said that the religion is based upon 4 hadith, and one of them is this. Some scholars have said that. The narrator of the hadith is Abu al-Abbas Sahal ibn Sa'id al-Sa'idi. So his kunya is Abu al-Abbas. There are only 2 companions that have the kunya Abu al-Abbas. So one is obviously here, Sahal ibn Sa'id al-Sa'idi, and the other is Nuh ibn Abbas. It came in Hadith, was it 19? Right? So only 2 companions have the kunya Abu al-Abbas. One is Abdullah ibn Abbas, and the other is Sahal ibn Sa'id al-Sa'idi. So this companion, Sahal ibn Sa'id al-Sa'idi, was actually from the Ansar. He was Ansari, and from the tribe of Al-Khazraj, so it's Khazraji. Both he and his father were companions. Both he and his father were companions. Now his actual name isn't Sahal. What does Sahal mean? Easy. His actual name that was given to him at birth was Huzn. Huzn means sadness, to be upset. That's not a nice name to have, that this person is known to be the sad one. Right? In English, that's a slur, you call somebody a sado, right? So it's not a nice name to have. So Islam has come to always encourages a person to have good names with good meanings. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he found that his name was Huzn, the Prophet ﷺ changed his name from Huzn to Sahal, to easy. Somebody is easygoing, and so on. So the Prophet ﷺ changed his name. He's from those who are maqil min al-riwayah. What does that mean? Yeah, he narrated very little. So he wasn't from those companions who who were known to narrate a lot of hadith. He only narrated very, very few hadith. And from those hadith is this hadith. And that shows that what's important is not necessarily narrating a lot. But even if you know a little, but that little is beneficial, that's what matters. Right? So even if you only attend a few classes, but you learn a little bit, what's important is that you act upon that little that you know. Not necessarily being able to memorize every single thing in every single book. But even the little that you know, making sure that's beneficial, that takes you closer to Allah, and you act upon it and so on. He lived for a very long time. He passed away in the year 83. He passed away in the year 88. Passed away in the year 88. But when he passed away, he was over 100 years old. Yusuf, how old was he when he passed away? Over 100 years old. Is that old? Very, very old. No, mashallah. Okay, what's the general meaning of the hadith? The general meaning of the hadith is that it shows the importance of the concept of az-zuhd, and that it is the means of attaining not only the love of Allah but also the love of the people. Not only the love of Allah but also the love of the people. So now we need to um, actually we'll talk about zuhd in a second. But let's come to the beginning of the hadith. The beginning of the hadith, Sahl ibn Sa'ad al-Sa'idi radiallahu anhu, he comes to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Do you have the book with you? Is that the 40 hadith book?
No, it's not.
That's a different book. Okay. Right. And then share the notes. You have the notes?
I don't.
No, share the notes with them. Yeah, so they can follow along. So he said, O Messenger of Allah, Dullani ala amal. Show me an action or direct me to an action. إذا عملته, if I do it, if I act upon that action, أحبني الله وأحبني الناس. If I do it, then Allah will love me and the people will love me. So two things he wants. He's come to the Prophet ﷺ, and this shows the fiqh of the Sahaba. You know, they want actions not for the sake of doing actions, or not just for the sake of knowing, but for the sake of attaining the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he asked, show me an action. And again, this shows the fiqh of the Sahaba how? Because he realizes that he can't attain the love of Allah except through actions, not just through speech, not just through hope in the heart, but through actual actions. So many people, we talked about this before, the Murji'ah, right? That say, Iman's in my heart. Or if somebody's sinning and he says, don't worry about it, what's in my heart is the most important, right? That, even though there's an element of truth to it, which is that only Allah can see what's in your heart and so on, except that the manifestation of what is in a person's heart will show on their limbs. So if you were somebody that truly loved Allah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly loved you, you will be doing those actions that are beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've talked about this before, I mentioned many ahadith. From them is this hadith. So this Sahabi Sahl radiallahu anh, he realized the only way to attain the love of Allah is by doing action. So he asked the Prophet ﷺ to show me those actions which will allow him to attain the love of Allah and the love of the people. Then he asked for how many things? What type of action? The action has two things. Number one, the love of Allah. So he mentioned the love of Allah first. Why? Because that's the foundation. That's the most important thing. But then he also asked for the love of the people. And there's nothing wrong there's other hadith as well that show similar meaning. There's nothing wrong for a person wanting the people to love them, wanting a family to love them, his friends to love them. In of itself is not something wrong, as long as it's not done in a manner which is opposing the Sharia, as long as the love of the people does not come first over the love of Allah, and so on. So anything which has that type of meaning, then it would be incorrect. For example, somebody says to you, if you do this, then I'll love you. Right? For example, a woman, you're chasing after a woman, she says, right, if you want to marry me, then don't pray. In that scenario, obviously, it's not allowed for a person to leave off praying. The woman says that, leave that woman, don't leave off praying. Yeah? So this is the question of Sahal radiallahu anhu. Also, here it says a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked. So, my bad, it wasn't Sahal that asked the question, he narrated the hadith. He said a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked the question. Yeah. Who is this man? What do we call this in hadith? Mubham, ambiguous. We don't know who this man is in this particular narration. It could be worked out from other narrations, but is it important to always work it out? No. The only time it's important is if knowing the person would have an effect on the ruling. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter who asked it. The main thing is the benefit that came from the question. So therefore, if it's something you can easily work out, then in working out there's no harm in knowing. But sometimes there are some scholars that have gone into so much depth and they end up reading, tens of books just to work out one name. And that, I wouldn't say it's a waste of complete time, but What's more important is the meaning behind it. Okay? So a man came to the Prophet and asked this question, O Messenger of Allah, show me an action or direct me to an action that if I do, Allah will love me and the people uh, will love me. And the Prophet said, Izhad, have zuhud. Zuhud, asceticism, they say in English. But what is az-zuhud? Az-zuhud, in simple terms, is when your heart is connected to the hereafter. Az-zuhud is when your heart is connected to the hereafter. Zuhud is not when people think, okay, zuhud means I have to wear, torn clothes. I can't be enjoying my wealth. I can't be enjoying the dunya, things in this world, and so on. That isn't the correct understanding of zuhud. Zuhud is when your heart is connected to the hereafter. And everything that you have in this dunya is in your hands, but not in your heart. So you can have money, you can have wealth, but that's not something which has overtaken your heart. It's in your hands. You use it when you need to use it. You spend it when you need to spend it. You can enjoy it if you want to, as long as it's within the boundaries of Sharia. It's not extravagance, it's not wasting money, it's not something haram, but it's not something which overtakes your heart. Some ulama have given the example of it like slippers, bathroom slippers, right? You use it when you need to, so you have to have it. You use it when you need to, but it's not something you're going to be thinking about the rest of the day, is it? Right? With slippers that I use going to the bathroom. So likewise the dunya. So there's nothing wrong with having money. 6 out of the 10 promised paradise were businessmen. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is known to be a famous businessman, right? Using that money, what did he do? He freed Bilal radiallahu anhu, and he freed many of the other companions. Uthman radiallahu anhu is known to be a very, very wealthy companion. What did he do? He had a well. There was a well. The people of Medina needed that well. He bought it and then made it a waqf. Waqf means he made it as an open charity anyone can use. And until now, 1400 years later, people are still using that well. And you can go visit if you go to Medina. You just get a taxi and you can go. So having wealth is not something which is something that's praiseworthy. It's when it overtakes your heart. In a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he said, 3 types of people Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not speak to them or look at them on the day of judgment. Meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not look at them or speak to them in a form of mercy. Rather, it will be, Allah will not care about these people and they'll be punished and so on. One of them is a'ilun mustakbar. The one who is poor, but he has arrogance. So this shows there are some people that will have wealth, but they are very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they are humble. That wealth does not overtake their heart. They spend in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on. But then there are others who are poor. They don't have anything. But with that, they're still arrogant. They might have a little bit of money, maybe just a little bit more than their friend. But then they start to have arrogance over that. And that's worse because if the person that has wealth, he ends up being arrogant, at least you understand why he's arrogant. The one who's poor has nothing to begin with. So why is he arrogant? That's even worse in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the point I'm using this hadith is that it's not necessarily having wealth or not having wealth which defines whether a person is going to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. It's what he does with that wealth or the station of that wealth in that person's heart. So that is az-zuhd. There was another concept, we've talked about zuhd before as well in hadith number 6 and other hadith. There was another word which is al-wara'. Al-wara'. Az-zuhd is a higher level than al-wara'. But what was the difference between az-zuhd and al-wara'? Who remembers? That's ihsan.
Al-Wara' related to obligatory and prohibited matters, az-zuhd goes also to things that
You could explain it like that, but we give a different thing, huh? Yes. So al-wara' is leaving off anything which will harm you in the hereafter. So you know that this can harm you, you leave it off. Az-zuhd is higher. Az-zuhd is leaving off that which does not benefit you. So it's not something wrong. It's not something which is going to harm you. But is it benefiting you or not? If it's not benefiting you, you leave it off. That's the difference between wara' and zuhd. Wara' is leaving of that which harms you, as zuhd is leaving of that which does not benefit you. So even just talking, yes, it's permissible. But you think to yourself, you know what, I'm just going to talk, I'm just going to waste my time. I'm not going to benefit. As zuhd would mean that you leave it off. In terms of wealth, you're going to buy something, it's permissible. But is it something beneficial or is it just something nice, but it's not going to benefit me? Leaving that off is from a zuhd, not wasting money, not wasting time, and so on. So that is as zuhd. I've got here how some of the Salaf explain zuhd. Just a few other narrations from regarding a zuhd from some of the Salaf. Imam Ahmad had a book called Az-Zuhd. He mentioned the Abu Muslim al-Khawlani. He said, the zuhd in this dunya is not by making things which are halal haramun, nor is it by wasting your wealth. This is not zuhd. But zuhd in the dunya is to have have certainty that that which is with Allah, to have more certainty with that which is in the hands of Allah than that which is in your hands. Meaning, you have more certainty in the reward which is with Allah in the akhirah than the things that you might have with you right now. وَإِذَا أَصِبْتَ بِمُصِيبَةٍ كُنْتَ أَشَدَّ رَجَاءً لِأَجْرِهَا وَذَخِرِهَا. And that if you are afflicted with any difficulty, you have more hope in the reward which will come in the hereafter later on. So, because why? Remember, your heart is connected to the akhirah. You're going through a difficulty now, but you know it's a test. So your heart is connected with the reward and the outcome which will come in the akhirah. In another narration, there was Yunus ibn Maysarah, who also gave another definition of zuhd. He said, give the exact same definition, but the ending he changed. And he said, وَأَنْ يَكُونَ حَالُكَ فِي الْمُصِيبَةِ وَحَالُكَ إِذَا لَمْ تُصَبْ بِهَا سَوَاء وَأَنْ يَكُونَ مَادِحُكَ وَذَامُّكَ فِي الْحَقِّ سَوَاءً. Is that the way you are when it comes to trials and tribulations and the way you are normally is the same. I.e., when you're normal and you're in a state of a state of blessings, you're grateful to Allah. And then when you are afflicted, you have patience and you believe and you have certainty in the reward from Allah. Your heart's always connected to Allah. You're not happy once and despairing another time. And then he says, if somebody praises you or if somebody dispraises you, you're the same. Why? Because praise from the people doesn't affect you. Anything from the dunya doesn't affect you. Whether it's praise, and we can also extend the meaning to wealth or anything. That will not change you. Why? Ultimately, what matters to you is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you, or how your outcome is in the hereafter. That's what ultimately affects you. So that's another way that some of the Salaf have explained as zuhd. We've got here a question: what did Imam Ahmad say the three types of zuhd are? Imam Ahmad, he said zuhd is three types, and he basically is giving three different stages or levels of zuhd. He says, number one, tarkul haram, leaving of that which is haram. That is zuhd al-awam. That's zuhd of the general people. It's leaving of that which is haram. Obviously, here this would basically include the meaning of wara' as well, but Imam Ahmad is speaking generally. Yeah. But number two, he says, tarkul fuduli min al-halali wa huwa zuhdu al-khawas. Anything which doesn't benefit you, if you leave that off, that's the zuhd of the very high level people. High level people. But then he comes to a third one. He says, تَرْكُ مَا يَشْغُلْ عَنِ اللَّهِ. Leaving off that which busies you from Allah. That which busies you from Allah. That is the zuhd of the scholars. So number one is leaving off that which is haram. Number two, listen, stop talking, I'm going to repeat it. Number two is leaving off that which is non-beneficial. Number three is leaving of that which busies you from Allah. So number two is just anything which doesn't benefit you. It can be the dunya, it can be anything that doesn't benefit you. But number three is even higher than that. If it diverts you away from Allah, you leave it off as zuhd. That means your whole life is revolving around what? just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the akhirah. That's the highest level of az-zuhd. Anything which takes you away from that objective, even for a second of thinking or remembering Allah or the akhirah, then that is the highest level of az-zuhd. It says here, the next question, in the hadith, what do we have zuhd from? So here, in the hadith is mentioned two things. Having zuhd from Allah, zuhd fi dunya, zuhd from the dunya, from the worldly matters, the materialistic things and everything else in this world. And number two, zuhd from the people, i.e., the people or what is in the hands of the people. This person might have wealth, this person might have fame, status, whatever he has. You're not interested in those things. Your life doesn't revolve around those things. Remember, we said it's not haram for you to make money or to have that, but it's not something your heart is connected with. Nor do you go around asking people for things. Some people go around always asking for things, oh, you have this, give me that, right? Especially when there's not a need. You should stay away from doing so. A Muslim should be somebody who has honor. And even if he's struggling, a Muslim is somebody who should, work hard himself to attain instead of asking others. In a hadith, where some said, the higher hand is better than the lower hand, i.e., or the hand which is giving is better than the hand which is receiving or taking. So if you stay away from the things in this dunya, then you attain the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you stay away from what's in the hands of the people love you. Generally, why? If you're always going around asking people for things, they get annoyed. Or it lowers your station. What do we say? We say this guy's a beg, right? Huh? And yeah, it takes away from muru'ah as well, if you're always going around and asking. Yeah. There's another question, next page. Why is it called dunya? This is an extra benefit. Why is the world called dunya? The word dunya actually means, in the Arabic language, and subhanAllah, I'm never going to forget this now, the actual meaning of dunya, because I was translating for a sheikh, and he said, I can't remember what concept it was, but he said that this concept is split into a number of levels. He said the first is martabatun dunya, or martabatun dunya. He said the level of dunya. So I translated it as the level of this world. And then I translated it. And then he said, well, martaba thaniya, the second level is martaba, and then he said, I can't remember if he said middle or high. When he said that in my head, I was like, how does that make sense? Dunya, world, and the next level is middle level, and the level after is a high level. Straight away, I remember the other meaning of the word dunya. And I corrected the translation. Dunya means something low. So the first level was the lower level. That's why, when you're translating, it's not easy. It's not easy translating. So the dunya, everything in there is low or haqir, humiliated, nothing of status, very lowly things. Why? Firstly, in terms of time, it's before the akhirah, it comes before. What is eternal and forever is the hereafter. Also of the things which are in it. The things in here are not like what is in the hereafter. Everything, things break, things happen, temporary, they will eventually leave. But that which is better, perfect, things that you desire and you want, better than that, you can't even imagine, and will stay forever, eternally, is that which is in the hereafter. And we got another question here. Why is it dispraised? Why is the dunya dispraised? I mean, there's so many ayat. Ibn Rajab, in his explanation, in the beginning, he mentions a few ayat, right? بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير. Sama? Good try. خير وأبقى. We hear it every Friday. أحسنت يا Yusuf. Very good. Right? Allah says, بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا. That you prefer the worldly life. والآخرة خير. The hereafter is better. وأبقى and everlasting. We recite this every Friday. Yeah, in Jum'ah Salah. And there's many other ayat. Wherever the dunya is mentioned, Allah then mentions the akhirah and how it is better. But if you notice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't mention the dunya by itself and dispraising the dunya by itself. The reason being is because things in this dunya by itself is not something, this praiseworthy. Like we said, There's nothing wrong with having money. Right? By itself is not which is dispraiseworthy. What causes it to be dispraiseworthy is what we do with it, our actions, which are connected to it. So obviously, in comparison to the akhirah, it's low. Because if you do actions for the dunya, it's not going to benefit us. If you do actions for the hereafter, it will benefit us. Right? Or we have wealth. Wealth in of itself is not something wrong. If you use it, if you attain it in a way which is pleasing to Allah, halal, and you spend it in a halal manner, you give it in charity, you pay your zakah, and so on, you'll be rewarded. It's a means for your ranks to be raised in Jannah. But if you allow it to overtake your heart and you earn it in a haram manner and you spend it in a haram manner, what's going to happen? It's going to be a means for you to be punished in hellfire. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he mentions a lot of statements regarding the Salaf and regarding um, az-zuhud. I'll mention a few. These are just extra, you don't really need to know them, but it's good. The reason I'm mentioning it is so that it saves you time from reading the whole explanation. It'll make your life easier. In the beginning, he gives a definition. One of the points he said, وَقَدْ ذَمَّ اللَّهُ مَنْ كَانَ يُرِيدُ الدُّنْيَا بِعَمَلِهِ وَسَعْيِهِ وَنِيَّتِهِ. That Allah has dispraised those that intend with their actions things in this life and not the hereafter. And then he said, we've already talked about this in the hadith, Al-A'malu bin-Niyat, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّات. How is this connected to إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّات? No.
Uh, every action you do, there's a reason behind it.
Good. So obviously, if you do things for this world, you're not going to get the reward for the hereafter. Good. But a bit more, anything else? What about the examples that were given?
You are making hijrah for the sake of a woman.
Good. So the example of hijrah was given, of migration. That it was this praise that if you moved house, right? And we talked about this when it's this praise or not. But if you move just for the sake of marrying a woman, right? Then that's not the same as doing hijrah for the sake of Allah and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After that, he said, وَمَعْنَى الزُّهْدِ فِي شَيْءٍ. The meaning of having zuhud in something, so that practically having zuhud and applying it, الْإِعْرَاضُ عَنْ turning away from it. لِاسْتِقْلَالِ وَاحْتِقَارِهِ. Due to how belittled the action is. وَارْتِفَاعِ الْهِمَّةِ عَنْ. And that your aspirations are higher than it. And that your aspirations are higher than it. Then he mentioned some statements. I'll mention a few. Al-Hasani said, من أحب الدنيا وسرته خرج حب الآخرة من قلبه. Whoever loves this world and it makes him happy, then the love of the hereafter will leave his heart. Whoever loves this world and it makes him happy, then the love of the hereafter will leave his heart. Basically, your heart's going to be either full with love of the akhirah or love of this world. So if you fill it with the love of this world, then there's not much space left for the love of the hereafter. This is further explained by Awn ibn Abdullah. Awn ibn Abdullah, he says, the dunya and the akhirah, this life and the hereafter, in the heart of a person is like the two scales or the two sides of the scale. The more one is heavier, the less weight the other one has, or the less space the other one has in the heart. And then Wahab gives another example, similar. Some others might like this example. He says the dunya and the akhirah is like a man who's married two wives. If one's happy, the other one gets upset. Then you keep that in mind when you marry two wives, yeah? Inshallah. Right, we move on to the next hadith, inshallah. Hadith number 32. نعم يا أكرم. يا موسى.
أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا ضرر ولا ضرار رواه حديث حسن رواه ابن ماجه وغيره من مسلم.
No, remember that. No, why? Fine, carry on.
عن عمرو بن يحيى عن أبيه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أسقط أبا سعيد ولم يفرق بفضل بعضها بعضا.
Now, the next hadith, um, a very, very powerful hadith, which I'll explain in a second. We'll quickly do the takhrij of the hadith. The author actually makes a mistake. He says, it's narrated by Abu Sa'id ibn Malik ibn Sinan al-Khudri, radiallahu anhu, or by short, he's known as Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. You might have heard that name, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, radiallahu anhu. And then he says Ibn Majah. That's not fully correct. So, two different companions have narrated the hadith. It's been narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri in Ad-Daraqutni. So he was correct there. So in Ad-Daraqutni, it's hadith number 3079. 3079. And it's narrated by Al-Hakim. What's the book of Al-Hakim called? Mustadrak. Hadith number 2345. 2345. And it's narrated by Al-Bayhaqi in another book called Al-Kubra. Sunan Al-Kubra. Hadith number 11,384. 11384. 11384. As for what's narrated in Ibn Majah, that hadith was narrated by Ubadah ibn what's his full name? As-Samit. What are you pointing over there for? Ubadah ibn Samit radiallahu anhu. So the Ibn Majah, that particular narration was narrated by Ubadah ibn Samit radiallahu anhu. Hadith number 2340. And these mistakes happen, subhanAllah. Now obviously some youngsters that don't know any hadith at all and have not studied, they'll come and say, how can this great Imam make such a mistake? That's because you're using Google and ChatGPT. Back in those days, you have to memorize all those. Do you think it's easy just from the top of your head trying to remember who narrated which hadith and which book it's in? Yeah, they were very, very precise. Just here and there. He didn't even make a mistake. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri did narrate the hadith, but just in Daraqutni. Just specifically in Ibn Majah, somebody else narrated the same hadith. It's not a major, major mistake. Especially since Imam Nawawi is writing a secondary book of hadith. It's not a primary book of hadith. Yeah? Most of the people that say, oh, he made a mistake, tell him to recite just this book, 40 hadith, Imam Nawawi by heart. They can't recite it. Even though he's taken out the whole chain of narration, he's shortened it for you. And even the whole hadith, all his whole hadith. Never mind the Imams. Imam Ahmad was asked, when can a person be known as a Hafiz? Hafiz now is when somebody memorizes the Quran, right? The Quran is, that's the baseline. So he was asked, if somebody memorizes 100,000 hadith, is he a Hafiz? He said no. 200,000? No. 300,000? No. 400,000? He did this. Arju. I hope so, maybe, inshallah. How many hadith? 400,000 hadith. That's how they were. Imam Ahmad, they say he memorized how many? Million hadith. Bukhari, they say he memorized 600,000 hadith. Right? So we struggle with 40. Right. Anyways. So it's in Ibn Majah, but Ubadah ibn Sabit, hadith number 2340. 2340. And it's also been narrated in Ibn Majah by Ibn Abbas, 2341. So 2340 was Ubadah ibn Samit and 2341 was Abdullah ibn Abbas. This hadith in of itself is weak. However, no.
Sorry, Ibn Majah is
40, 40.
40, and Ubadah ibn Sam.
But that was Ubadah ibn Samit.
Ibn Abbas was
2341. The one straight after. The hadith in of itself is weak. However, it is Hasan al-Ghayri. It is Hasan due to supporting narrations. Okay. And this hadith, as Ibn Salah, he mentions, he says that the supporting narrations make the hadith Hasan. Then he says, وَقَدْ تَقَبَّلَهُ جَمَاهِيرُ أَهْلِ الْعِلْمِ وَاحْتَجُّوا بِهِ. The overwhelming majority of scholars, not just the majority, the overwhelming, nearly everyone, all accept the hadith and all use this hadith. And that's because if we come to the general meaning of the hadith, right? Or if we come, even let's just talk about the status of the hadith before we get to the meaning. This hadith is the base for one of the qawaid al-kulliyah al-khamsah al-kubara. The five major legal maxims that are agreed upon. So there are five legal maxims we have in the religion. Huh. Go over the hadith. We're going to go over it in a second. So this is my intro to the hadith, talking about the importance of it. Yeah? So it's one of the five, what do you say, five legal maxims, major legal maxims, which are agreed upon by all of the scholars. So there are five in total. The first, I'll mention what the five are, yeah? The first is al-umuru bimaqasidiha. Basically, actions are by their intentions. And that's based upon the hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are according to their intention. Okay? And we've talked about the hadith before. Number two, al-yaqinu. Come on, who can finish off? لا يزول بالشك. Certainty is not removed by doubt. We've talked about this before as well. Certainty is not removed by doubt. Number three, al-mashaqqatu. Who can finish off? تجلب. What was that?
توسيع
توسيع. No, تيسير.
تيسير
تيسير. تا يا سين يا راء. المشقة تجلب التيسير. Hardship necessitates ease. And it's a simple explanation of that is that when anything becomes too difficult in the religion, then you don't have to do it. It becomes easier. Simple example, Yusuf, if I can't stand and pray, what do I do? Let's say I hurt my leg playing football. What do I do? I can sit down, good. If I can't sit down, then lie down, very good. Yeah? So if standing is too difficult, the religion says, all right, don't stand up, sit down. Right? If you can't get up to sit, then lay down. Okay. And if you can't even let's say you can't lay down and move your face or anything, what do? You just pray with the eyes. If you're paralyzed, you just pray with the eyes. So you just do what you can. Like look down a bit more for sujood or whatever the case may be. You just do what you can. If you don't have enough money to do Hajj is a pillar of Islam, right? If you don't have enough money, then very good. Yusuf, you're a faqih, mashallah. Right? You don't have to do Hajj. You don't have to do Hajj, right? Number four is this one, which in simple terms they call it ad-dararu yuzal. Ad-dararu yuzal, which means harm is removed. Harm is removed. Which obviously will explain. These five, I'll mention the fifth one in a second, is in the science called al-qawaid al-fiqhiyya, legal maxims, to do with jurisprudence, how you apply the rules and so on. We don't have time to go into all of that. Even under this one, ad-darar yuzal, there's a number of subcategories. But however, hopefully in the new academic year, I'm going to start an online program for fiqh in there with al-qawaid fiqhiyya. That'll be online separate to this. But also in level 2 as well of the syllabus, we'll have a separate full book on qawaid fiqhiyya, so we'll go into detail then, inshallah. So don't worry, it'll come eventually in the syllabus, or if you want to do it online with me when I do it in September, you can do it there as well. The fifth one is al-'ada muhakkama. Al-'ada muhakkama is the customs of the people are ruled by. Basically what that means is that anything in the religion which hasn't been specified, then you go back to the customs of the people in applying it. Right? So that's why some people they don't want to give any importance to culture whatsoever. It's not fully correct. Yes, it goes against the Quran and Sunnah, of course, but in things which are open and not specified by the Sharia, it goes back to the customs of the people. So for example, Allah says, وَعَاشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Live with your wives with good. What does it mean, goodness? Like, how many times do I have to take her out? How many times do I have to buy a Chanel or Prada bag? Or how many times do I have to take a Sephora? Yeah? And how many times do I have to do, what's the ruling? How many times do I have to do all of that stuff? Yeah? There's no ruling. It's not 1, 2, or 3. What do we say? We say, al-'ada muhakkama. Go back to the customs of the people. The custom of your people or the class that you're in, how many times would that normally happen? That's what you go by. So for example, your friend, you want to check up on your friend. If generally, it's not too serious, and if you just give him a call or text message, generally amongst the people in that society, a text message, a WhatsApp message is enough, that's fine. That's fine. So obviously, like I said, there's more detail to it, but that's just like a simple explanation. So these are the five legal maxims that are agreed upon. One of them is this, الضرر يزال. In fact, some scholars have gone to the extent to say all of the fiqhi rulings come back to this one specifically. That every rule ultimately goes back so you don't end up harming anyone. Why is this haram? So you don't harm yourself or in your religion. Why can't you do this transaction? Because it'll end up either harming you or harming the person you're doing transactions with. Why is this not allowed in marriage? Why? Because it either end up harming you or your spouse. So this is a very, very important principle. What's the general meaning of this principle? Is harm is removed. So what's the hadith? لا ضرر ولا ضرار, which means there's no harm. What's the translation that I've written here? It says there should be neither harm nor harming, neither reciprocating harm. We're going to get to the difference between the two parts of the sentence. But basically what it means that anytime there's harm, you should remove it. Okay? And there are subcategories, sub-principles. Like if there's two harms, you choose the lesser of the two evils. If by removing one harm, it's going to cause more harm to come out, then you don't. There's other principles like that. But like I said, that's a separate science. Okay. The narrator of the hadith is Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu. Now, we've got his name, which is Sa'id ibn Malik ibn Sinan al-Khudri. He was, from the most knowledgeable of the companions, right? He is from those who narrated one of the most hadith. We took him before. But he was the faqih and the mufti of Medina as well. After the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was quite young in the life of the Prophet. He tried to partake in the battle of Uhud, but the Prophet did not allow him because of how young he was. But then his father passed away in that battle, and then after that, all of the other battles he took part with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He passed away in Medina in the year 74. Passed away in Medina in the year 74 after Hijrah. The general meaning of the hadith we just talked about. Right. Let's go through the actual wording of the hadith. Now, it says, لا ضرر ولا ضرار. We've got a question here, which is, what's the general meaning of the hadith? The general meaning of the hadith, as we explained, is that anytime there's any harm, it should be removed. There should be no harm upon anyone in any way, shape, or form. And this shows us a number of things. Firstly, the Sharia has prohibited harming anyone. Muslim, non-Muslim, old, young, male, female, all harm should be removed. Obviously, that is in line with the Sharia though, right? It's in line. Sometimes some harm would be allowed, but it wouldn't be considered harm. For example, somebody steals, somebody does a crime, you're going to throw him in prison. It's going to harm him, might harm his work, but this is where the other principles come in play. Why? This is for to protect the greater harm, so that he doesn't end up killing other people or whatever the case maybe. Yusuf, you got a question? This also is a very good example. Ahsant. But we'll talk about that later, inshallah, Yusuf. Also, what we learn from this as well, there's no ruling in the Sharia which is harmful in of itself. So, some people might say, what about this ruling? What about that ruling? In of itself, there's no harm. There could be subjective harm to a certain person or a group of people or whatever, but objectively, there's no harm. Or in other words, the benefit is always more than the harm. Like this example, right? Somebody does something bad, right? You throw them in prison. Yes, there's some harm to that person. He's taken away from his family, taken away from his job. Or if you apply any of the other rulings that would apply. But ultimately, objectively, we wouldn't consider that harm. In fact, that's more benefit to society. Nobody's going to turn around and say you're harming society by doing this. In fact, they will praise you and say, no, you're benefiting society by doing that. And it also shows the actual perfection of the Sharia, how it gives everything, it takes everything into consideration. Now we come to these two words, لا ضرر ولا ضرار. Darar and dirar. Is there a difference? Now there is another narration that you can't find in some books of fiqh, لا إضرار. And there's a nice story of Imam Ibn Salah. Yeah. Nice story. Ibn Salah, he asked his teacher, Ibn Dihya, and he said, made dua to him and everything. I said, look, there's a narration that some people have said, that some of the fuqaha have mentioned it, لا ضرر ولا إضرار. And his teacher said, Shaitan narrated this hadith. But the hadith is not found in any of the books of hadith. It's not found anywhere. It's made up. That wording is not there. The wording is لا ضرر ولا إضرار. لا ضرر ولا ضرار. Okay, so what's the difference between these two words? Because obviously in Arabic you can see there are two different words. ضرر, ضرار. So extra alif and harakat have changed slightly. Some scholars have said it's the same. It's been repeated to show emphasis. They say the meaning is the exact same, but it has been repeated to show emphasis. But there are many other scholars that say that there is a difference between the two words. But then those who have said that there is a difference between the two words have differed on what exactly the difference is. So they have a number of different opinions. We're going to mention a few of them. The first is what Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah mentions, where he says, darar is where you intentionally harm someone. And dirar is when you unintentionally harm someone. So even intentionally and unintentionally, both types of harms are taken out by the Sharia. It's not allowed by the Sharia. Yes, if a person does it unintentionally, they're not sinful for it because it wasn't intentional. But repercussions can still take place. If I go to your house and I accidentally, well, not to your house, but if I have any object of yours and I accidentally break it, for example, yes, there's no sin upon me, but I still have to pay for it and either replace it with a new one or fix it. Yeah. So that was Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah's answer. There's another one, the second, which is also very strong. Many of the ulama have said, Ibn Abdul Barr, Ibn Salah mentioned that this is the stronger one. Likewise, Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh in his explanation, which is darar is where you harm somebody else and you benefit at the same time. And dirar is when you harm somebody else but you don't benefit from them. So in both instances, you're harming others, but the first one, darar, is where you benefit from others, from that harm, and dirar is where you don't benefit. So for example, darar could be you steal someone's money. You've harmed them and you've benefited from the money. And dirar could be where you just hit someone, you didn't benefit anything, but you've harmed them. Okay? There are some others. That darar, some say darar is an ism, it's the noun, it's the name of the concept. Dirar is referring to the verb, or referring to the action itself. Yeah? Some have said that. Some have said darar is harming somebody who has not harmed you, and dirar is harming somebody who has harmed you. Okay? Jazakallah khair. Abdul Karim, when you speak, what are you teaching him of? That's what he's talking about, right? Whatever the case may be, ultimately, you know, just stick to knowing the first two opinions, you're fine. Yeah. Ultimately, the general meaning is what? We don't harm anyone, whether it's others, ourselves, whether we're benefiting or not benefiting. It's not allowed for you to harm anybody else. So therefore, the principle is whenever there is harm for others, then we have to remove that harm, or it's not allowed for us to cause that harm. Yeah, even Ibn Rajab, one of the points we mentioned before, that there's no harm in the Sharia whatsoever, he backs that up. He mentions a few hadith, like the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I have been sent بِحَنِيفِيَّةٍ سَمْحَةٍ. Hanifiyya is the religion of Ibrahim, turning away from shirk. Samha means easygoing, not harming anyone. Basically, that's a hadith narrated by Ahmad, Hassan, and others. Now, okay, let's move on to hadith number 33 now. Go on, Musa. You thought only two hadith today. Plus now we're doing more. I'm telling you, most likely, maybe not, but when you get to Hadith 43, I think 43 to 50, I'll do one lesson. All those 8 will do one lesson. So make sure you're ahead.
عباس رضي الله عنه قال أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن عباس رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لو يعطي الناس
لو يعطى الناس
الناس وعد بأعدائهم وباعد
بدعواهم
ادعى رجال أموال قوم ودماءهم لكن البينة على المدعي واليمين على من أنكر رواه البيهقي وغيره وضعفه في صحيحه.
إذا حديث حسن رواه البيهقي وغيره هكذا وبعضهم في الصحيحين. Okay. This hadith, as you can see, is narrated by Al-Bayhaqi in As-Sunan Al-Kubra. As-Sunan Al-Kubra, hadith number 21,201. 21201. But the origin of this hadith, the meaning of this hadith can be found in Sahihain. So you can find it in Bukhari, hadith number 4,552, 4552. And also in Muslim, 1711. So Bukhari 4552 and Muslim 1711. The status of the hadith, this hadith, again, every hadith in this book is like that. Foundational hadith. Imam Al-Nawawiyyah rahimahullah says, وهذا الحديث قاعدة كبيرة من قواعد أحكام الشرع. And this hadith is a great principle from the principles of the rulings of the religion. Imam Al-Nawawi says, I'm going to write this one. He says, this hadith is a great hadith from the principles of the rulings of the legislation. And Imam Al-Sa'idi says, and this hadith has a great status, and it is from the foundational, and it's a great foundation from the foundations of judging and ruling. Judging and ruling. No, Imam Sa'idi. Do you know who Imam Sa'idi is? Imam Sa'idi is, he passed away last century. He's a teacher of Ibn Uthaymeen, who passed away. Ibn Uthaymeen passed away about 20 years ago. He's got a very famous tafsir called Tafsir Al-Sa'idi. Very, very concise. Okay. The narrator of the hadith is Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma. We've talked about him before. The general meaning of the hadith. Now, the general meaning of the hadith is that this hadith shows us what to do when there's differences at court, and that the claimant is the one who has to bring the proof. The claimant is the one making the claim, has to bring the proof, and the one who denies has to take an oath. The one who denies has to take an oath. And obviously, it's not allowed for a person to lie, take an oath and lie. In fact, that's a major, major sin. I've written for you the hadith here. Prophet said, if anyone swears a firm oath knowingly, intentionally, taking by it property belonging to a Muslim, meaning you're lying, you're taking somebody else's property by lying, Allah will be angry with him when he meets him on the Day of Judgment. Yeah? Okay, let's go through the hadith. What happens? Person starts off with an introduction and he says, لو يعطى الناس بدعواهم. If the people were given due to their claims, meaning if people just claim things, this is mine, that's mine, he did this, he did that, and just by a person claiming something, they would be given it. لَدَّعَ رِجَالًا أَمْوَالَ قَوْمٍ وَدِمَاءَهُم. Then people will unjustly claim the wealth and lives of people. Unjustly take their wealth. He this my money. He took this from me. And likewise, the lives of people as well. Or he killed my father, so we got to kill him. Things like that. And obviously, the rights are many. Right? You have rights when it comes to spouses and rights to so many things. But the two which are the most, not from the most common and also from the most important, is when it comes to wealth. That's why it's mentioned first, because that's probably the most common one. And then number two, lives as well, because it's most important. The life of a person. So therefore, the person starts with this introduction to say that if that was the case, then chaos would take place. Therefore, Islam has come with a solution. And that the solution, obviously there's more rulings. This is just one foundation hadith in this topic. From the solutions is what's in the rest of the hadith. It's also mentioned here, rijalun, men would. That's because most of the time when it comes to these issues, especially back in the day, men were the ones going out making money and so on. Therefore, the disputes would take place between them. But the ruling is not, this hadith is not specific to just men. Anything in the religion, even if it's addressed to men, is also for the women, unless there's a specific proof to show us that this ruling is specific to women. Then it's specific to them. Like hijab, for example. So men are not going to wear hijab. But otherwise, it is general. So what has the religion come with? It says, لكن البينة على المدعي. The proof is upon the claimant, واليمين على من أنكر, and the one takes the oath, and the one who denies has to take an oath. So the one who is claiming has to bring a proof. Okay, who is the claimant? Who is the one? How do you work out in the situation? This person is considered the mudda'i, the claimant, and this one's considered the munkir, the one who's denying. It's very important. What do you guys think? The one who's okay. Well, if you accuse me and I accuse you back. Anything else? Want to accuse first? Okay.
The one that's making the statement.
Both can make statements.
The one who be let on both sides, the one who's going to be unhappy is the one who's accusing.
So it's linked to emotion. Who's unhappy if he's let go?
It's the one who's got the problem. Because if the other one has got a problem, then there's no accusation from them. There's the one who's obviously got the issue, the one who's bringing it all together, then he's the one who's accusing.
Okay. Anything else?
It's just similar to whoever has the has to be disputed already.
Okay. You guys are close. You can still argue them, but nonetheless close. Yeah.
Don't want to make a claim, but the one who
You don't make a claim, but you're telling me who the claimant is. Yeah.
the one who is going against or for the religion. So going against or something for the Sharia.
You stole money from me, so I've taken you to court. What's that got to do with the religion? Huh? Everything. MashaAllah, that's philosophy now. Wealth is wealth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and wealth is used for zakah, so therefore it's connected to religion. It's connected with the religion yeah, in that sense. One whose rights been taken or oppressed. By the way, so the problem with some of yours is that you're understanding that the claimant is the one who is the one who's always truthful. Is the one who's always truthful. Sometimes the person is oppressor, and then he'll still take you to court, and he'll sue you and still take more money from you. right? So it's not always the one that takes you to court or the one who's speaking and trying to claim something is truthful or it actually deserves it. Yeah. People are taken to court unjustly. Yeah.
The one who wants something, when he wants something.
Okay. Right. Abdul Karim, you had something? No. Okay. Just as you scholars differed, the scholars have differed as well on the exact definition. But generally, there are two main things that they mention. Generally, two main things that they mention. They say firstly, al-mudda'i إذا سكت ترك. He is the one that if he remains silent, then the whole issue is left. Yeah, that's what you said. That's what Ammar said, right? So, like for example, right now, Naeem steals my money. I just stay silent, but nothing happens. Class, it's forgotten. It's forgotten. But then if I take to go to court and say, oh, he's taking my money, then they should start. I'm claiming something now. The second thing that they normally mention is the one who claims something which goes against the apparent. The one who goes against the apparent. So, for example, he's taking my money. The money's with him now. Yeah, the money's with Naeem. So I say he stole. What's apparent? It's his money. It's with him. Let's say I'm walking on the street and I see Ahmed driving a car. He's in Bradford, so he's driving an RS3. So I say, that's my car. What's apparent? Ahmed's car, he's driving it. So I'm claiming something which goes against the apparent. Yeah? But you don't like RS3.
I said, like, you said what's apparent, that you're not insured.
It was apparent that it's not insured. Okay. So that's generally how you would identify who is the mudda'i. Okay. Therefore, the mudda'i, what does he have to do? The claimant, what does he have to do? He is the one that has to bring the proof. Why does he have to bring the proof? Because he's in a weak position. He's going against what's apparent. Or in other terms, he's going against the asl, you could say as well. He's going against the default ruling. Right? It's going against the asl. So that's general. Obviously, this is used in court, but even generally, if you are talking with someone, or debating someone, and they say something, and you say, no, that's not the case. Who is the one that has to prove it? Whoever is going against the default ruling, whoever is going against the asl. Right? So for example, who give me an example of something which would go against the asl?
Anything that we make a claim of Islam, we have to delete for it.
Oh yeah, generally. But now let's say you make a claim and I say that's not the case. So I'm denying it. So for example, look, if it's in ibadah, then yes, what you're saying is correct. I say there's a sixth salah which is also obligatory. We all know that it's 5. That's the asl, that's the default ruling, that's the apparent. So for somebody to say that, you say prove it. Bring your proof. Right? Yes, that's an example. I'm sure you can think of other examples later on. Now a question comes, what is a bayyina? What is a proof? Now a proof, the ulama say, اسم جامع لكل ما يبين الحق ويظهر. It's a comprehensive noun for everything which makes the truth apparent. Anything, it's a comprehensive name for anything which makes the truth apparent. So therefore, it can be anything. So many different types. Yes, depending on the situation, it can change, and some are accepted and some are not accepted. But generally, so many types. It could be al-i'tiraf or al-iqrar, where you yourself, what's the word in English? When you yourself say, yeah, I did it, you acknowledge that you did it.
Admit.
Admittance, yeah. You admit yourself. Right? Is that the word? Confession, that's the word, yeah. So you confess, right? So you yourself say, yeah, I did this. Right? That's a proof. Or al-iqrar. Or it could be a shuhud, shahada. You have witnesses. Right? That's also a proof. Also, what's apparent, that can also be some sort of proof. For example, Naeem took my money. So the Imam saying, no, it's my money, it's with me. So that's his kind of proof, right? It might not be as strong as some of the others, but it's a type of proof. Um, anything, from anything which can be considered something which proves your point is considered a proof. But as I mentioned, depending on the situation and depending on the type of issue, it would differ. And in some scenarios, some are stronger than others, some will be accepted and some will be rejected. Or for some, depending on the issue, especially if it's an Islamic issue, which is the religion has specified how much you need, then you need that specific amount, otherwise it's not accepted. But as a general thing, anything which clarifies the truth is considered a proof now.
Islam accepting circumstantial evidence, like based on situation, this person.
Yeah. Yeah. So depending on the situation, you would. But also saying most likely you can't give a rule on it unless it's like 99% or something. Then maybe. Also, just most likely you could like an assumption or something. And then depending on the situation, maybe in certain circumstances they could, but generally no. Generally no. And that actually connects to this hadith that we're going to take. Now, okay, we might as well move on to the next part then. Right, that's the one who's claiming. He has to bring the proof. So in Islamic issue, if I say this is halal or haram, I have to bring a hadith or an ayah. That's the proof that I have to bring. Okay. وَالْيَمِينَ عَلَى مَنْ أَنْكَرَ. As for the one denying, what does he do? So let's say this deny. Remember, like I said, the one denying isn't necessarily the one who actually did something wrong. He could be falsely accused. What does he do? Let's say he's got no proof. Or there's a situation where, and this connects to what Shazad was saying, the claimant brought a proof, but it was not strong enough, it's not clear. What does the denier do? He takes an oath. He swears by Allah, but Allah didn't do this. If he does that in this type of situation, he's left. If he turns around and says, I'm not going to swear by Allah, then even if the claimant did not bring clear proof, the judge will rule in his favor if he doesn't take an oath by Allah. Okay? So that's what a person has to do. So if a person has no proof with him whatsoever and he denies the claim, he has nothing else left, and there's not clear evidence against him, he swears by Allah that he didn't do it. Yes.
What if a person doesn't truly fear Allah?
Yeah. So what the judge would do is that he would remind him of all of these ahadith. That if you're lying, because it's not a normal sin, it's one of major sins. Right? But then again, it's only in those scenarios where there's no clear-cut proof. If there's a clear-cut proof, let's say he stole, you find evidence in his house, you find the car and the money in his house, you find CCTV footage, you find witnesses, then it doesn't matter. Then, okay. It's in those areas where it's not as clear. Then we say to him, all right, swear by Allah. And if he doesn't, then we give that ruling against him.
If he's a huge fasting, can the accuser then bring witnesses and prove that he's a fasting, like a horrible sinner?
And therefore, that his testimony
Yeah.
of this is also not be accepted, maybe. I don't know off the top of my head. It's very interesting. We did a whole semester, just it's called Talaq al-Hukm, just on what's considered proofs. So it goes into a lot of detail. Obviously, those that are actually trained to become judges have to study that in more detail. Maybe in the future, inshallah. I've actually not touched that book since I graduated. maybe later on, once we get to that level, we'll revisit that book, inshallah. Yeah.
He lies and he swears and he's lying, then he has.
Obviously, if he lies and he swears by Allah and he lies and we don't know, that's between him and Allah, and he'll be punished for it without that. It's very, very severe.
And if it becomes apparent he did lie?
Oh, then the ruling will be against him. Obviously, it's under the will of Allah, but nonetheless. For example, this hadith, whoever, man halafa ala yamin, whoever swears intentionally, knowing the meaning, but he's lying, just so he can take the wealth of somebody else, he meet Allah and Allah will be a ghadban. In English doesn't do justice. Not this angry. What does ghadban mean? Extremely angry. Yeah.
What's the specific punishment for breaking an oath?
Okay. So breaking an oath. What's the thing for it? A lot of people think what you do is you just fast. That's not what you do. Fasting is in there, but it's not the first thing. So kafarat, expiations in Islam are of different types. There are some which are, you have takhyir, you can choose. So you have either do A, B, or C, you can choose. And there are some which are upon tartib. Tartib means you do the first one. If you're not able to do the first one, you move on to the second. If you're not able to do the second, you move on to the third. This one here is called kafarat yameen. Okay, kafarat yameen is where you swear by Allah, but then you don't uphold it. Okay? Then what's the ayah? لا يأخذكم الله باللغو في إيمانكم ولكن يأخذكم بما عقدتم الأيمان فكفارته, right. There's two steps. There's a step where you can choose, and if you can't do any of those choices, then he moves on to the next order. So he either فكفارته إطعام عشرة مساكين, he feeds 10 poor people. أو كسوتهم, or he clothes them, he buys clothes for 10 poor people. أو تحرير رقبة, or he frees a slave. Obviously, we don't have slaves anymore, so that's not really going to apply. Okay? فمن لم يجد, if a person is not able to do any of these three things, فصيام ثلاثة أيام, that's when he fasts 3 days, and it should be 3 consecutive days. Okay?
I was asking more what the specific punishment is.
Like in the hereafter. So you have to gather all the hadith. The hadith that we've got here is that Allah will be angry, extremely angry with him. As for the other hadith, I don't remember off the top of my head. But I'm sure if you do a quick search, you'll find it. Inshallah. Right. Lesson's gonna 9 o'clock. Okay. Okay, yeah, so that's just the main meaning of the hadith. And subhanAllah, the hadith, it does show how the Sharia has come with everything. It's come protecting a person's wealth, protecting lives, even teaches how to judge and how to rule, and uh, so on. And as an extra benefit as well, I'll mention what Ibn Munzir says. Ibn Munzir is a name that you should know, especially in fiqh. He's got a book called Al-Ijma', consensus. And in there, for a lot of the fiqh issues that we have, he mentioned where there's consensus and when there's not. So if you want to know if there's consensus, one of the books to go to is Ibn Munzir. Some scholars have said he was a bit lenient here and there, but nonetheless, it's one of the main books and he's quoted a lot. Anyways, he says, أجمع أهل العلم على أن البينة على المدعي واليمين على المدعى عليه. That the ulama, the scholars have consensus. They have all agreed that the proof is upon the claimant. واليمين على المدعى عليه. المدعى عليه is the one who the claim has been made against. So there's ijma' upon this issue. No. Okay, so that's 3 hadith inshallah take today. Took today. Thursday probably just take 2 hadith because they're a bit longer. But now, inshallah, make sure you guys are memorizing. Those who are memorizing, continue. Those who haven't memorized, maybe get motivated to start memorizing. Inshallah, like I said, a hafiz is somebody who's memorized how many hadith? 400,000. Just take off a few zeros and just do 40, inshallah. Okay?
It said the meaning of dunya is below or
Something lowly, yeah.
say that the heavens and akhirah is actually proof to show that the light is above and the heavens are above.
Ahsan, you could, it's not a clear-cut dalil, but you could say the dunya is something low and the akhirah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are high. It wouldn't be for Allah to be somewhere low. Yeah. It's not a primary dalil, but it's a nice extra point now.
So, well, day that to show the
What ayah? There's one ayah in Surah Hadeeth which is very good. Yeah, Surah Hadeeth, one ayah literally summarizes the reality of the dunya. اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد till the end. Right? Yusuf knows the ayah, mashallah, yeah? You can recite it for us.
وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد غيث أعجب الكفار نباته ثم يهيج فتراه مصفرا ثم يكون حطاما ففي الآخرة عذاب شديد ومغفرة من الله ورضوان وما الحياة الدنيا إلا متاع الغرور.
أحسن ما شاء الله. Very good. Very good. I should motivate everyone else to memorize as well. Ahsan, Yusuf is going to become a big scholar in the future, inshallah. Right, that ayah, I'll let you guys find out the meaning of the ayah, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.